Picture this. A 13-year-old black girl stands frozen on a stage, spotlight burning her skin, 500 faces staring, most of them white, most of them smirking. They set her up to fail, a cruel prank meant to humiliate her in front of her elite school. But when she opens her mouth, her voice does not just silence the room. It changes everything. In the next few minutes, I am going to take you through a story that is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about resilience, resistance, and the power of a single voice. Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments, and if you have ever felt like an outsider, smash that like button. Let us dive in. My name is Mike, and for the past 35 years, I have been digging into stories like this, stories that show the heart of the black experience, stories that most people overlook because they do not know where to look. I have studied history, music, culture, and the patterns that connect our past to our present. This story about a girl named Abigail Carter at Hillview Academy is not just about one moment on a stage. It is about something much deeper. It is about how one voice can expose truths that powerful people have spent decades trying to bury. It is about how our community has always found ways to rise, even when the odds are stacked against us. And by the end of this video, you will see why this story is not just Abigail's. It is yours. It is ours. Let me break this down for you. Today, I am going to show you 5 things. First, how a cruel prank meant to break a young girl became the spark for a movement. Second, how systemic racism hides in plain sight in places like elite schools. Third, how history repeats itself in the barriers we face. Fourth, how our community's strength lies in our ability to connect and resist together. And fifth, why artistic expression, like Abigail's singing, is one of the most powerful weapons we have. If you do not stick around to understand these layers, you are missing the real message. And trust me, that is exactly what they want. We are going to peel back the curtain in ways nobody else dares. This story hits different when you know the context. Abigail Carter was 13, one of a handful of black students at Hillview Academy, a private school where wealth and privilege set the tone. Her mother, Mary, worked 2 jobs to cover the 30% of tuition not covered by Abigail's partial scholarship. Every day, Abigail navigated a world where she was made to feel like she did not belong. But here is what nobody tells you. She had a gift, a voice passed down from her grandmother, Esther, a gospel singer who once lit up churches in Atlanta before life and systemic barriers forced her to step back. Abigail kept that gift hidden, singing only in private, because at Hillview, standing out was not safe. But wait, there is something else that will change everything. The school's winter concert was coming up, a big deal where students performed for alumni and college scouts. Abigail had no plans to participate. She stayed invisible, her survival strategy in a place where microaggressions were as common as polished marble floors. Then, a group of popular girls, led by Charlotte Reynolds, daughter of a major donor, decided to make Abigail the target of a prank. They forged her name on the concert sign-up sheet, listing her to perform a gospel song they thought she would fumble. The trap was set. Humiliate the scholarship kid, prove she did not belong. But what they did not know was that Abigail's voice was not just a talent. It was a legacy. This is where it gets really interesting. When Abigail found her name on that list, her world turned upside down. She tried to back out, but the music teacher, Mrs. Peterson, dismissed her protests, saying her signature was on the form. The principal, Mr. Bennett, leaned in hard, implying her scholarship could be at risk if she did not perform. The system was closing in, designed to make her fail, but Abigail had something they did not expect. She had her grandmother's spirit, her mother's sacrifice, and a quiet strength that had been building for years. This was not just about a song. It was about who gets to belong. Let me tell you something that will blow your mind. Abigail did not just perform that night. She turned their prank into a moment that exposed the school's hypocrisy, its so-called commitment to diversity unraveling under the weight of her voice. And this is the part that broke my heart. She was not just singing for herself. She was singing for every black student who had been made to feel less than, for every ancestor whose voice was silenced. By the end of this video, you will see how one girl's courage sparked a movement that reached far beyond that stage. Before we move on, there is something crucial. This story is not just about Abigail. It is about us. How many times have you felt like you were set up to fail, only to find a way to rise? Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you faced a stacked deck and came out stronger. I read every comment and I want to know your story. Because this journey we are on, it is personal, it is real, and it is connected to something bigger than any one of us. Let us set the stage. Abigail woke up every morning at 5:30, 2 hours before most kids her age. She checked her uniform for any flaw that might draw attention. Her mother, Mary, was already at her hospital job, then off to her evening shift at a law firm. That scholarship was their lifeline, but it came with a cost. Abigail was one of 10 black students in a sea of 450 wealthy white kids. She learned early to keep her head down, to move like a shadow through Hillview's gleaming halls. But here is what nobody tells you. She carried a secret. In her tiny apartment bathroom, she would sing, her voice echoing the gospel hymns her grandmother taught her. That voice was her sanctuary, her connection to a lineage of black women who used music to survive. To understand why Abigail's story hits so hard, we need to go back, way back. The black experience in elite spaces like Hillview is not new. It is rooted in a history that has been repeating for centuries. Let us talk about it. Back in the 1800s, when black people first gained access to education after enslavement, it was a battle. Schools were segregated, underfunded, or outright non-existent. By the early 1900s, black families like Abigail's were fighting tooth and nail for scholarships to white institutions, only to face hostility designed to push them out. This was not just about academics. It was about proving you did not belong. Sound familiar? That is what Abigail was up against at Hillview, a modern-day echo of those same barriers. Let us break this down. Elite schools like Hillview were built for the wealthy, the connected, the white. When black students started entering these spaces, whether through scholarships or desegregation, the system did not roll out the welcome mat. They created subtle traps, microaggressions, rigged opportunities, teachers who assumed you could not keep up. This is where it gets really interesting. These institutions would tout diversity while setting up black students to fail, ensuring the status quo stayed intact. Abigail's story is a direct descendant of that history. Let us go deeper. Gospel music, which Abigail was forced to perform, carries centuries of black resistance. Born in the fields of enslavement, spirituals were coded messages of hope, survival, and rebellion. Songs like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot were not just melodies. They were lifelines, carrying messages of escape and freedom. When Abigail's grandmother, Esther, sang in Atlanta's churches in the 1950s, she was part of that tradition. But here is what nobody tells you. The music industry, like elite schools, marginalized black artists. Esther's career was cut short not because of talent, but because systemic racism blocked her path. Abigail inherited that legacy, but also the weight of those unfulfilled dreams. This is where it gets complex, but stay with me. By the 1960s, the civil rights movement was pushing for integration, but elite institutions resisted. They would admit a few black students to check the diversity box, then make their lives hell. Fast forward to today, and not much has changed. A 2023 report showed black students in private schools face higher rates of disciplinary action and lower rates of advanced course placement compared to their white peers. That is the world Abigail walked into every day at Hillview. The prank was not just a mean girl move. It was the system working as designed. But wait, there is something else that will change everything. Abigail was not alone. Her friend Grace, a white girl who saw through Hillview's facade, became her ally. And then there was Mr. Wilson, the janitor who was once a music professor at a top conservatory. He recognized Abigail's talent because he had lived through the same exclusion decades earlier. This pattern of black talent being overlooked until someone from the community steps in is woven into our history. Think of the black teachers, mentors, and churches that nurtured talent when white institutions would not. Abigail's story is a continuation of that. Let us connect the dots. The winter concert at Hillview was originally a community fundraiser in the 1960s, started by black musicians to support scholarships. Over time, Hillview absorbed it, erased its roots, and turned it into a showcase for classical music, sidelining diverse voices. This erasure is a microcosm of what has happened to black contributions across industries. From jazz to hip-hop to gospel, our cultural innovations are often co-opted, stripped of their meaning. Abigail's performance was about reclaiming that stolen history. This next part is going to make you angry. When Abigail found her name forged on the concert list, it was not random. Charlotte Reynolds, whose father, Edward Reynolds, was a Hillview donor, orchestrated it. They wanted Abigail to crash and burn, reinforcing the narrative that black students could not compete. But here is the real story hidden in plain sight. The school's administration knew. They did not stop it. Why? Because it served their purpose. Keep the black scholarship kid in her place. This is the historical pattern playing out in real time. Drop a comment. Have you ever been in a space where you were set up to fail to prove a point? I want to hear your story, because what Abigail faced, it is not just her fight. It is our fight. And there is a moment coming that is going to blow your mind about how she turned the tables. So let us dive into the heart of Abigail's story. It seems simple on the surface. A girl gets pranked, sings, and shocks everyone. But there is so much more beneath the surface. Let us break it down from the beginning. Abigail woke up every day knowing Hillview was not built for her. She was one of 10 black students in a school of 450, her mother, Mary, working 2 jobs to keep her there. Abigail's strategy was to stay invisible. She would glide through the halls, avoiding the likes of Charlotte Reynolds, whose father's name was on the school's new library. But one day, during morning announcements, the principal mentioned the winter concert. A big event. Alumni, college scouts, the works. Abigail had no intention of signing up. She knew it was not for her. But here is what nobody tells you. Charlotte and her crew saw an opportunity. They forged Abigail's name on the sign-up sheet, listing her for a gospel song, assuming she would fail spectacularly. When Abigail saw her name on the bulletin board, her stomach dropped. She went to Mrs. Peterson, the music teacher, to explain it was not her signature. Mrs. Peterson brushed her off, saying it looked like her handwriting. The principal, Mr. Bennett, doubled down, hinting her scholarship could be in jeopardy if she backed out. The trap was set. This is where it gets really interesting. Abigail's only ally was Grace, a white girl who did not buy into Hillview's social hierarchy. Grace warned Abigail that Charlotte's plan was to humiliate her, to prove she did not belong. But Abigail had something else. Her grandmother, Esther, had been a gospel singer, her voice once filling Atlanta's churches. Esther taught Abigail how to sing, not just notes, but stories of survival. Abigail would sing in her bathroom, keeping it secret, because at Hillview, showing your true self was dangerous. Here is what just happened there. The school did not just expect Abigail to fail. They gave her an impossible song, Ave Maria, a classical piece way beyond her training instead of the gospel song she was listed for. Mrs. Peterson claimed it was to uphold Hillview standards, but it was a setup. Charlotte even admitted she suggested it, thinking Abigail could not handle it. The layers keep getting deeper. Abigail practiced alone in the auditorium, her voice cracking on the high notes, her confidence slipping. She knew they wanted her to crash. But wait, there is something else that will change everything. One evening, Mr. Wilson, the janitor, overheard her struggling. He was not just a janitor. He was a former music professor, forced out of academia for challenging its biases. He saw Esther's techniques in Abigail's singing and offered to help. They ditched Ave Maria and chose Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, but with a gospel jazz twist that honored her heritage. This was not just about a song. It was about reclaiming her voice, her history. This next part is essential to understanding. The school doubled down. Mr. Bennett caught Abigail and Mr. Wilson practicing after hours and put Mr. Wilson on administrative leave. Abigail's locker was vandalized with racial slurs. The administration dismissed it as a prank. Even Abigail's mother, Mary, got an anonymous call threatening her job if Abigail did not withdraw. The system was tightening the screws. But Abigail kept going, meeting secretly with Mr. Wilson at a community bookstore, where she found allies who had faced the same battles at Hillview. This is where everything clicks together. Abigail's performance was not just about singing, it was about exposing the school's hypocrisy. The winter concert was rigged to favor Charlotte, whose father had been promised a board seat if she won the Outstanding Performance Award. Abigail's slot was scheduled last, when most of the audience would be gone. Her backing track was sabotaged. Her microphone was tampered with. Every move was designed to silence her. But there is a moment coming that is going to make you angry and inspired at the same time. Drop a comment. Have you ever faced a system stacked against you? How did you push through? Because what Abigail does next is a game changer. This is where it gets personal. Abigail's story is not just a story. It is a mirror reflecting our reality. You know exactly what I am talking about. How man. Why times have you walked into a room where you were the only one, where every glance felt like a challenge to your right to be there? Abigail's experience at Hillview is our experience. Whether it is a school, a workplace, a neighborhood, we have all felt that pressure to shrink, to stay quiet, to not make waves. Abigail was set up to fail, just like so many of us have been in spaces not built for us. But here is what nobody tells you. Those spaces do not define us. Our response does. Abigail's response was to sing, to use her voice not just to perform, but to resist. And that is what connects her to our community. Let us talk about now. In 2025, black students in elite schools still face higher suspension rates, lower placement in gifted programs, and subtle biases dressed up as high standards. A recent study showed black kids are 3 times more likely to be disciplined than their white peers for the same infractions. That is Hillview. That is the world Abigail navigated. And when she found her name forged on that concert list, it was not just a prank. It was a message. You do not belong here, but she flipped it. This is where it gets real. I remember being in high school, one of the few black kids in advanced classes. Teachers would call on me last, assume I needed extra help, even when I was acing tests. I felt that weight, that expectation to fail. Maybe you have felt it too, at work when you are passed over for promotions, at school when your ideas are dismissed, in your community when you are watched closer than others. Abigail's story resonates because it is our lived experience. But wait, there is something else that will change everything. Abigail did not do this alone. She had Grace, who stood by her when no one else did. She had Mr. Wilson, who saw her potential because he had been through the same fight. She found a community at a bookstore filled with people who had faced Hillview's discrimination. This is our community. We survive because we lean on each other. Think about the aunties, the uncles, the mentors who have pulled us aside and said, keep going. They cannot stop you. This next part is going to make you angry. The night of the concert, everything was stacked against Abigail. Her backing track was gone, her microphone tampered with, her performance scheduled last. But she had allies in the audience, people who stayed to support her, people who knew the real Hillview. This is our strength. Our community shows up. We do not let each other fall. And what Abigail did on that stage, it is what we do every day when we refuse to be silenced. This hits different when you understand the context. Abigail's performance was not just about her. It was about every black kid who has been underestimated, every black woman whose talent has been dismissed, every black person who has been told their voice does not matter. Drop a comment. When have you had to stand up and prove them wrong? Because what is coming next is the moment that changed everything. Here is the truth that nobody wants to talk about. Abigail's performance was not just a song. It was a rebellion. It revealed the core of what we face in spaces like Hillview. Systemic racism does not always look like a burning cross. It is in the forged signatures, the impossible tasks, the threats to your livelihood. And I know some of you watching right now have felt this exact thing. Let us break this down. Abigail took the stage, no backing track, a dim spotlight, an audience half gone. She started with Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, traditional, safe. Then she shifted into a gospel jazz arrangement, weaving in freedom songs, her grandmother's style. The audience leaned in, caught off guard. But here is what nobody tells you. She ended with an original piece by Esther called Unshackled, about being silenced but refusing to stay quiet. Every note was a challenge to Hillview's facade. This is where it gets complex, but stay with me. Abigail's voice carried centuries of resistance. When she sang, she was singing for Esther, who was pushed out of music, for the black musicians who created the concert's original purpose, for every black student at Hillview who had been marginalized. Her performance exposed the school's diversity claims as a lie. The principal, Mr. Bennett, tried to stop her, but the audience, filled with her allies, would not let him. Camera phones were out, recording everything. This is the part that broke my heart. Abigail's mother, Mary, almost did not make it in. Security blocked her, claiming her pass was not valid, but Mrs. Reynolds, Charlotte's mother, stepped in, letting her through. That small act of conscience showed even the privileged can crack under the weight of truth. When Abigail finished, the auditorium erupted. Mr. Wilson, on administrative leave, led the standing ovation. The judges, including a music producer named Rachel, were stunned. This was not just a performance, it was a reckoning. And this is the part that will. It'll make you angry. The school tried to spin it. They called Abigail a surprising talent, as if they had discovered her. They offered her a spot in their fundraising materials, trying to co-opt her success, but Mary was not having it. She called them out for setting Abigail up to fail, for threatening her job. The truth was out, and they could not hide it. Abigail's performance went viral, exposing Hillview's systemic racism to the world. Here is the deeper truth. Abigail's voice was not just hers, it was ours. It was the voice of every black person who has been told they do not belong, yet rises anyway. This matters beyond a concert. It is about how we use our gifts to dismantle systems that oppress us. It is about the hope and empowerment within our struggle. But there is one more layer, the most important one, that ties everything together. Drop a comment. Have you ever used your talent to push back against injustice? Because what Abigail did after that night, it is going to blow your mind. So here is what I want you to take away from this deep dive. Abigail's story is not just a story. It is a blueprint. It shows us where we have been, where we are, and where we can go. Her performance was not just about singing. It was about using our gifts to expose and dismantle systemic racism. It is about turning a moment of humiliation into a movement for change. 6 months later, Abigail stood before the State Board of Education, presenting evidence of Hillview's discriminatory practices. Her allies, from Mr. Wilson to Rachel to community activists, helped compile decades of testimonials. Hillview's principal resigned. The scholarship program was revamped, named after Esther. Abigail's performance sparked a movement that forced real change, not just at Hillview, but in how we confront institutional racism everywhere. This analysis took me weeks to put together because these connections matter. These stories matter. Your understanding matters. Next week, I am diving into another story of Black resilience, one that will hit just as hard. If Abigail's journey opened your eyes, if it made you see yourself differently, smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you the hardest. Was it Abigail's performance, the school's sabotage, the community's support? I read every comment, and I want to know. Until next time, keep digging deeper. Keep finding the truth in every story, because our stories matter and so do you.